What is up, beautiful people? Welcome to this episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. In today's episode, I sit down with Chris Arnold. He is the founder, creator of Simplifiers Brotherhood. He has an incredible story that he's going to share with you today. It's one of those hero's journeys that even I was like, holy shit. Like, it was wild. The things that he went through in order to become the man he is today is incredible, to say the least. I'll say it, he consolidated 8 years of personal development into 7 months, and you'll see why in today's episode. What came through was so incredible that like I don't want you to miss this. So definitely watch the episode all the way through because he shares his hero's journey of hitting complete rock bottom, going through the dark night, and becoming the man he is today. And it's an incredible episode. So I know you're going to get an amount out of it like I can't even fathom. Like it's going to be incredible. So enjoy today's episode. And before we dive into today's episode, be sure if you're watching this on YouTube, hit like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching this or listening to this on your audio, be sure to click subscribe so that you know when the next Unbreakable Man podcast is coming up. Again, our mission is to help you become the man you want to be, to create the life you want inside and out. And that's through sharing journeys, through going through the processes of what is required for you to be authentic, whole, complete in every area of your life. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit like and subscribe on there, and you will get an incredible amount out of this. If you are watching this before July 2024, make sure we got a next Unbreakable Man experience coming up July 26th through the 28th. Go to theunbreakableman.com and apply for a spot at that space. If you are going through the dark night, if you are just looking for more out of life, if you've achieved some level of success in your business, in your work, in whatever area, and you just know that there's something missing, that 3-day process will help you consolidate what I say 10 years of personal development into 3 days. It is a massively transformative experience. I will put my money where my mouth is, and I will even say I will guarantee transformation. I will guarantee it. Most coaches don't do that. I'll throw it out there right now. Most coaches are just like, okay, yeah, come to my event and you're gonna get no, like I guarantee it. And I will say, if you don't get anything of value out of that experience, I will pay for your entire trip back and for your spot, right? Like if you get nothing of value, but I know you will, it's massively transformative. Every guy that has ever come through that program has all walked away completely changed in a very positive way. They all said it was very life-changing, and I know it will be for you. So if you are looking for more, if you're going through some stress, if you just know like, dude, maybe I don't even know what I want. We help you identify very clearly what those things are. We use the clarity formula, mindset mastery. I challenge you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, like help you find a truth within yourself so that you can be the man you want to be the leader, be the father, be the entrepreneur, whatever role you are playing in life. So be sure to go to theunbreakableman.com, hit apply. I will see you guys in there. And as always, stay unbreakable. Enjoy today's episode. Let's go. What is up, beautiful humans? This is Dr. Dave Cahotis. I am on a mission to forge strong, heart-centered, and purpose-driven men. And this podcast is here to help you stop managing your problems and start breaking free of stress, limiting beliefs, and excuses that stop you from executing at your fullest potential, living with passion, and being the man you want to be. Let's go. All right. Chris, man, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Good to be here with you.
Yeah. So you and I originally met at a breathwork experience, and then I got to know you a little bit over the course of a few calls, and I really was intrigued by what you got going on, what you've been doing. You have a mastermind right now for entrepreneurs, and one of the things that really sparked my interest in just connecting with you was your authenticity. One of the things that I really find valuable in another human is authentic expression, just showing up as yourself, just like being like in your center, being in your heart, sharing openly. Obviously you and I can go on a riff for in a lot of different ways, but I guess my first question for you was like, what led you to that, right? Like you're very centered, like embodied man, which I found, very valuable. So where does that come from?
Um, so I would tell you I'm 44 as of
Okay.
recording this podcast. For
Yeah.
about 42, 43 years of my life, that wasn't the case. I
Yeah.
lived in duality for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I was very much caught up in people's perspective of me and my need for validation, people to like or approve of me was a huge driver of what created inauthenticity.
Yeah.
So I would show up in whatever ways I needed to in order to win people over.
Hmm.
And I had to go through a very, we'll call it radical experience, to be stripped of that and to be able to show up in an authentic way, which I think we all desire to.
Yeah.
The thing that keeps us from doing that, though, is fear. There's a
Hmm.
lot of fear that keeps
Yeah.
us in authenticity, and it did for me.
Yeah. So tell me more about that, man. Like, was there like a pivotal moment like in your life that led you down that path?
Yeah, I mean, where the real inauthenticity started is it started with a lie. And I had cheated on my wife, who I
Okay.
was married to at the time,
Yeah.
and I had harbored that lie for years.
Yeah.
And I harbored that lie because my fear was if people really knew this about me, then I would lose that validation. I would lose the leadership roles that I had. So I've been a real estate entrepreneur for 19 years and
Okay.
have started multiple companies, bought companies, sold all of the above. And in that, you build reputation over time. You very much get caught up in your role as CEO and leader of communities, et cetera. And I felt exposing that truth would expose me. And what would that mean if people rejected me? Because
Yeah.
that would go at my greatest fear, right? If people
Yeah.
knew everything about me, then they would not accept me. And so, fast forwarding with that lie, that really was kind of the first domino in my unraveling.
Okay.
And moving forward, several years will kind of go up to about 2 years ago. I found myself on the post side of going through a divorce,
Yeah.
burnout after running businesses for 19 years, because there also is business trauma, whether you go
Yeah.
through
There's real,
2008.
that's real.
It's a real thing. It's a
Yeah.
real thing.
Yeah.
And just not listening to my body for all of those years, pushing in the name of achievement and wanting to accomplish more, because that was stemming from a place of just not feeling like I was adequate. So I was constantly waking up every day trying to prove myself, to my family,
Yeah.
to my colleagues, to people I didn't even like, just a constant trying to prove.
Yeah.
And so I found myself, at the end of that process of living in that paradigm for 19 years. And at this point, I had nothing left in the tank. And a company that I had bought a year and a half previous, a year and a half later, I was having to sell prematurely because I was just not in a place to run it.
Mm.
After 19 years of being burnt out, going through the divorce process, like I
Yeah.
was in the wrong headspace.
Yeah.
And this was going to be a public failure because everyone knew I bought this company within my industry. And so I felt like I was going from hero to zero. And because I was so caught up in people's perspective of me, I was as more concerned about my reputation and what I thought people were going to think of me for losing this
Mm.
opportunity than the money I was losing. And I was losing a shit ton of money to pay back my private lenders. And so fast forward the week of the sale of the company is coinciding. I run a brotherhood. And ironically, in all this, it's a brotherhood about transparency and authenticity. Yet you have a leader
Mm.
living in duality who's fearful to talk about the fact that he's lied about cheating on his wife. So
Yeah.
the full duality and the gamut of all this in my life. So it's all just coming to a head, all coming to a
Yes.
head. And so when I'm in Honduras, the we're basically going to do a building project together with these entrepreneurs, like a philanthropic trip. And it's the last week of the sell, and I am completely stressed out. And I need to be in Honduras, which I don't want to be, doing a building project at the same time. Attorneys are fighting. I'm losing my team. I'm losing my, like, it's more than I can handle. It's all just coming to like a head, right?
Yeah.
This is the thing. And when I'm in Honduras, I go into full-blown anxiety attacks for the first time in my life. I've never had anxiety attacks. I don't have any pre-mental health conditions, but I literally could not sit still. I became indecisive. I was pacing in a restaurant, making a scene, and my friends, understandably, were freaking out. What do you do? What do you do? Like, Chris is losing it here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's like holding a beach ball underwater.
yeah,
All the years of suppressing,
yeah.
ignoring, medicating, like, I can't hold the ball
Mhm.
underwater anymore, and it's coming out and it's spraying everywhere. And so what was decided was to get some anti-anxiety medicine.
Okay.
What you do, Western mindset. So got some over-the-counter Honduras Xanax, no telling what was in it. It was not prescribed by a doctor, so there was no amount that I was told I should take. So I was probably taking more than I probably would have been prescribed. They might have said half a pill. I was taking like a pill and a half to deal with this situation.
Yeah.
And that's obviously important because what happened in all of this is within 48 hours, I went into onset depression. Now, what I'm about to tell you is going to be part of a story about benzodiazepines,
Okay.
also called benzos.
Yep.
And that's the family of medicine that has Valium, Klonopin, Xanax, Ativan. So people have
Yeah.
heard of these, been around
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
So as I take that medication, I go into onset depression. I'm not going to realize for 7 months that the story I'm about to tell you is predominantly related to an adverse effect to this prescription drug.
Mm.
And within 4 to 5 days, I'm working on the roof. I've dealt with the sell of the company, but it's a very stressful, like you can imagine running on a roof, laying brick in a hot sun, going back in a room, negotiating a sell, attorneys are fight. Like it's chaos. It's chaos
Yes.
to do all this.
Yeah.
And so when I go out on the roof, about the fourth day on being on this medication, I go into what are called benzos hallucinations. Now, at the
Oh.
time, I don't know what benzos hallucinations are. I think I'm having a vision from God. It's going into my theological bucket.
Yeah.
In my hallucination, three things happen. And again, I don't see anything, I don't auditorily hear anything, but I move into the place of being the observer
Yeah.
in my body and my mind and being led. And the conversation I hear is threefold. A, Chris, there's absolutely no way out of this situation. Your life is over. It's done. And this is what benzos do. They exacerbate everything to the nth degree.
Yeah.
Secondly, this self-condemnation and hatred set in, and my life began to play out before me. And what I heard was, you're an absolute fraud. And everything, Chris, you've done in your life has been out of ill will. You're a piece of
Mm.
shit.
Mm.
I remember thinking to myself, wow, this God doesn't even condemn at this level. Like, I was confused, but I'm having this experience on this roof. And the last thing that comes in, and it's the first time I've experienced in my life, I had massive suicidal ideations. And those ideations came in like marching orders. Chris, when you go back to the hotel tonight, you'll grab those 2 boxes of Xanax, you'll eat them, and you'll get in a pool to kill yourself. And I did.
Mm.
2 o'clock in the morning, whatever, in the middle of the night, my friends had to fish me out of a pool. You can imagine my own brotherhood.
Yes.
Friends, we were down doing a building project, basically building a church.
Yeah.
And Chris eats 2 boxes of Xanax and gets in a pool to kill himself. I
Yeah.
blacked out, and when they fished me out, I woke up the next day in a Honduras hospital.
Wild.
No idea why I did what I did. At that time, I didn't understand that benzos does this to thousands of people. It creates massive suicidal ideation. Some refer to it as forced suicide.
Yeah.
All I know is I made the decision, and all that's known among my friends, you can imagine, like the one guy in the world who's protecting his reputation now, like can't hide it. Like it's out and people don't understand what happened. So basically what's thought is Chris had a mental breakdown. Like he
Yeah.
snapped.
Yeah.
He snapped. So what happens at that point is, because as I get back to Dallas, Texas, to give concept, I live in Tulum, Mexico. So I've been
Okay.
here for 7 years,
Yep.
but my family's in Dallas, so they fly me back. And when I'm there with my family, I can't formulate sentences, and my body is convulsing uncontrollably.
Mm.
And at this point, we don't know what to do. Like, was I underwater too long? Did I have brain damage? Does taking this much benzos do something to your mind at that level? We don't know. So what do you do? At that point, what was decided was to send me to get medical care. And I've never gone into any type of medical care in my life before, but to my family, which is completely understandable, this is above us. Like, we don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to one of these high level rehabilitation centers, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of all. I'm just going to speak my experience, right, of what happened when I stepped into one of these.
Yeah, yeah.
When I got there and showed up, I was shaking and convulsing and unable to formulate sentences. And they sent me in immediately to see a psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
Psychiatrist sat me down and asked me what was wrong. And I'm trying to, like, I don't know what's happening. This is why I'm here. And within about, 30, 45 minutes of the first meeting, I walk out on 5 prescription drugs:
Mm.
lithium, Prozac, baclofen, antipsychotics. Never taken any type of medication like this in my life. And I
Mm.
communicated that, but I come from a family where it's trust the doctors, take the medication. I'm not
Yeah.
saying we don't trust doctors, but we can't hand all of our authority over to someone with the title
Yeah.
who's wearing a jacket.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
dangerous. I'm trusting the process. But the real thing that went awry in all of this was that they did not continue me on a benzos. So what will happen and transpire now is I'll start to go into what are called benzos withdrawals. To put
Mm.
that into perspective, they are worse than heroin withdrawals.
Wow.
Yeah, no joke. And
Mm.
so over a week of being in this particular facility, I can't function because what happens is when you try to get off of benzos, for some of us, benzos take over the firing of your neurotransmitters. So when you try to get off, your brain won't pick back up the responsibility. So you literally can't function. You have trouble communicating, motor skills, all of it.
Mm.
Well, there within the facility, they diagnosed me being the symptoms that I had of benzos being severe anxiety, severe depression, and psychosis as being me, not the
Mm.
benzos.
Mm.
Unbelievable this happened in one of these facilities. So now I have doctors after my suicide telling me I have these things in my family. And after a week of being in that facility, they said, Chris, you're just not cutting it. You're not doing the work, which now I feel like the biggest pussy in the world, right? Because these
Yeah.
people, you're not showing up, you're not going to group, and I'm trying, but I can't. I don't understand why I can't. And at that point, they say, we're going to 2-man escort you to a higher level facility. You're
Mm.
not going home to your family. You're not staying here. We're 2-man escorting you to a higher level facility.
Mm.
So I'll pause there for one sec if you might have a question before I
Yeah, I
continue.
mean, there was a lot to unpack. I mean, we could go on in a lot of different directions. One of which is, that just like the pressing truth of the Western ideology and how to approach whether it's mental disorder or just any disorder for that matter, which is throw a pill at it. Let's do this thing with chemistry instead of truly getting down to the root cause of it, right? Like that's one thing. The other approach is, and this is really where part of the hero's journey, which is like kind of the root, which is like, and this is so common for a lot of men, and I experienced the same thing when it came to going in the direction of success. Like I had achieved a level of success for myself that was like, man, I'm doing it. I was working with professional athletes, Olympians. I was working with, like some high level guys, and I was like really successful on paper, but deep down there was something missing. And I too started to experience panic attacks. I remember being in it was a reunion of sorts of my graduate school. Like we had a homecoming, and I was there, and I just started to see tunnel vision. It was like everything just became like when my ears started to ring, and like I was like stuck. Like I kind of played it cool, but it was wild. Like that experience, if anybody's ever experienced that, it's like you are having an out of body experience. And for me, I knew that like if I went that route of Western medicine, that I knew that that wasn't the route for me. So I ended up personally going more the holistic side of things, and like, doing a lot more meditation, getting into breath work, getting into cold exposure, doing all these things that supported me. It took a lot longer. It took me still from that point. That was 2015. Up until really 2020 and 21, like when things like really flipped for me. But it was a journey. And so yeah, man, I mean, like, touch on just the whole underlying thing. This is a real thing for a lot of entrepreneurial men, of approval seeking, of like chasing this dream and success. Like, where do you think that like comes from?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the biggest realizations I had that allowed me to move back to a place of authenticity. So The reality is when we talk about duality or we talk about these behaviors in our life that we're not proud of,
Yeah.
first thing that I'll say, and it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're listening right now and let's say you're struggling with any type of drug or alcohol, or you're a workaholic, or you're using anything to numb, self-medicate, all of those things, right?
Yeah.
First of all, we live in a culture that judges that. And I love what Dr. Gabor-Mate says. The question is not why the behavior, but why the pain.
Mm, yeah.
All this behavior in the lives, even as I was talking in my duality, and it's all coming from a place of trying to mitigate pain. And why would we judge people for wanting relief from pain,
Yeah.
particularly pain that we don't even understand why it's there, and therefore we feel guilty and shameful to even have it when we
Yeah.
look at the overall context of our life, that things are pretty good. You
Hmm.
know, my business is running decent, my kids are healthy, you know, I've got a beautiful, you know, generally speaking, it's like, why am I still unhappy?
Yeah.
Why am I waking up with a sense of sadness? For a lot of men, it is depression, and we don't recognize it as depression because women internalize pain, whereas men externalize pain. And when men externalize pain like depression, it comes out in anger and rage and grandiosity. So when you start to see a lot of this anger issues in men's life, what it is a manifestation of depression, and that depression is sadness. So what is underneath the pain? What is underneath the overall depression? What I know is underneath that, what I came to understand is that it's trauma. And it's a very specific type of trauma that will either come from one of two places. It will either happen in childhood, usually between the ages of 0 and 10, or it can be inherited. So if you understand epigenetics, trauma travels through the genes,
Hmm.
and you could be dealing with behaviors and sensations and things going on in your body that aren't even yours, that
It's
were passed
wild.
down to you, that are
Very
just
true.
manifesting. So
Yeah.
just as you look, as I say, don't just look at your childhood, also look obviously at your genealogy or the genealogram of your family going back, you know, several generations. So
Yeah.
regardless of what the trauma is, it's all comes down to the same thing, and that is we experience as children what's called emotional neglect.
Mhm.
And when we experience emotional neglect, regardless of the situation, and sometimes it's whack, like our parents could have been, or a parent could have been alcohol, or we could have been abused, or like it's very obvious. The one that's tougher are those of us who experience lack. We had pretty good parents, but we didn't really realize or could pick up on the fact that there was emotional neglect, in the sense that they loved us, but they were not necessarily attuned to our emotions as a
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
So regardless of how it came down, it's the same story for all of us.
Hmm.
As a child, the way that that's received, because we are not mature enough, and we're not an adult enough in our thinking to understand, well, that's just our parent stuff. It doesn't have anything to do with us. The child who is dependent on the parent interprets it completely different. They personalize it, internalize it, and believe it's their fault. And then it creates this radical core belief that's driving all of this.
Hmm.
And the radical belief is, if mom or dad are not there for me, then that must mean I'm not enough.
Yep.
I'm not enough. And we are all living some version of this sentence. For me, my version is I'm inadequate. And the sense of inadequacy drove me for 43 years. So obviously, by the time I get to a place where I'm having an affair, that's just playing into my greatest fear, that
Yeah.
I'm inadequate. I mean, now we have like he's failing in his marriage. Of course he's inadequate. So it's so hard for me to face this. But what this does, and you said it earlier, is it puts us into what's called a performance-based self-esteem.
Mhm.
So if I feel like I'm not enough, then I move into a game of performance that, in order to feel adequate, I need to accomplish, I need to perform.
Yeah.
And as my performance goes up, I feel good about myself and my self-esteem.
Yeah.
But when market shifts happen or shit happens in my life, and my performance in my business and my bank account predominantly is the measurement, drops,
Yeah.
then my self-value drops. And this creates a massive roller coaster in our lives. And
Yeah.
our families see this
Hmm.
because they have to deal with what we're like when we're not functioning well. And here's the irony of it all. If we are functioning from a low vibrational emotion of fear
Yep.
or inadequacy, and we get to success, well, because it was driven by inadequacy, once we get there, we don't feel adequate of having it. So we
Yeah.
self-sabotage it.
Yeah.
And then we go back, and this is what creates this roller coaster of success and non-success in the life of entrepreneurs. And what the healing journey is all about is getting out from under that place and getting to a place of wholeness and to a place of feeling like I'm enough. And then I can start to function from higher emotional vibrations like love and peace and joy and passion, because that's an entirely different operational system on how to live your life and to grow a business.
Absolutely. And I would absolutely add to that, whether you want to call it self-fulfilling prophecy from the psychology books, or you call it, law of attraction, law of vibration, like you're going to get the evidence of what that core belief is, regardless of what it is, right? So like I too held that core belief of I'm not good enough. And it would show up in many ways, whether it was in business or in my relationship. And it would keep giving me this evidence until I went deeper within myself to acknowledge, to feel, to go within and say, I see you, I feel you, I understand you, right? Like give that little boy or the whatever the ugly quote unquote part of self, give that part of self an opportunity to be seen, to be acknowledged, just like we would a child, and to bring it forward. And again, it's like it's always going to come forward. It's always going to be there, like until you acknowledge that part of self. And so, what led me on my journey, and sounds like what's something similar to what led you on your journey, which is like that part of you was screaming out, and it was like, I'm going to give you panic attacks because you're not enough, right? It's like, and then the benzos, bring that even forward, even way more, without then having the ability to regulate the nervous system and have that, those processes kind of on the back end of like, what do I do with these thoughts, right? Because the most recent Nobel Prize showed us that consciousness is non-local, right? Like the highest award in science has described that consciousness, the thing that we experience as this human being, is actually not inside of us. It's non-local. It's like somewhere out there, and we are just attuning to it. And like it's pretty wild. But like why that's important is that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts, and you get to play with that. And so, obviously that led you on your path. And so kind of let's go back to the story. Now I'm wrapped in, man. Like you're being escorted, two dudes like walking you to a high level facility. Let's get us back to, how you became who you are today.
Yeah, so by that time, I'm going into what's called the acute state of withdrawal because we're
Yeah.
about a week in. And I then move into what will be the biggest hallucination that I have. I go into a hallucination for 2 weeks that I'm going to be handed over to the FBI.
Mm.
And that when I get to this facility, I believe that I'm part of a sting operation, and that basically all of the patients are undercover FBI. They are videoing me, everything I'm doing in my room, shower, bathroom. They're recording all of this. And it's so exacerbated over a 2 week period that I believe that it's being broadcasted to the world, and my friends are telling each other to turn on the news. So I
Mm.
won't leave my room. I don't want to even go down the hall to eat food because that's where the undercover FBI are, which I think are the patients. And so basically, for about 2 weeks, I just pace a room, and I'm literally the most god awful loop of my life, just
Mm.
waiting for them to arrest me, waiting to go to prison. And even though it's not real, my emotions, my body, my mind, it doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
experienced it as real.
Yeah.
Got in this loop basically where I was dehydrated because I didn't want to go down the hall and drink water. And I was literally just urinating every 10 minutes, just pacing my room for a couple weeks.
Mm.
And my body started shutting down. Obviously, I was losing weight. And again, you start going to an insomnia as well. So there was a period of like 4 or 5 days where I didn't even sleep, just pacing my room. And so after a couple weeks of being in that particular position, they came in. And again, I'm telling them like what I need to do to cooperate, what I need to do to hand myself over, but I'm just misinterpreting everything that's
Yeah.
going down because no one's really debunking me. They're like, well, what did you do? Why do you think we want to hand you? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, there's
Yeah.
no like someone coming in, like, this is not true. And so they sat me down and they said, well, in order for you to be able to communicate, because I was having trouble formulating sentences, we have a medication for you called Ativan. And Ativan is the strongest benzos there is, way stronger than Xanax. And so
Mm.
I took that medication, and unfortunately, they gave me too much at first. And so
Mm.
what ended up happening was I turned into Dennis the Menace. I was running around the facility throwing paper wads at nurses, like slapping them on the ass. Like, so at this point, It's like I had taken 10 shots of tequila. I now feel like they're feeding me a truth serum. Like
Mm.
they're doing this to make a mockery of me, to hand this over to the prosecution.
Yeah.
And so this turns into a week standoff in my room where they're coming in two by two trying to force feed me medication. Bro, beyond fucking traumatizing. 6 weeks
Yeah.
before that, I was in Portugal
Yeah.
on vacation. Now I'm in a facility where people are going up and down the halls, cutting themselves and screaming. Like my mind could not fathom the fall that
Yeah.
fast into that
Yeah.
particular position. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this place. And so, luckily, the way that I got out of the hallucination was I had a therapist who came in one day and she stopped being a doctor and she turned into a mom and she looked at me and she started crying. And I saw the sincerity in her eyes and she wrapped her arms around me. I hadn't been touched. They don't touch you in these facilities. I haven't been touched in weeks.
Yeah.
And she whispered in my ear, "We're not after you. We're here to help you." And it was like that seed was the key that I needed over the next 2 to 3 days to unravel that all of this was just coming from my brain.
Mm.
It scared the shit out of me. But it's like the best description I can give is if you've ever watched The Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
You get to the end of the movie and you realize he's been dead the whole time and they start replaying the scenes and you
Hmm.
misinterpreted the entire movie. That's exactly what my experience was like. I misinterpreted everything. And when I came out of that, I was like, I'm going to do my best to talk my way out of this place because now I'm on this Ativan and they're giving me a lower prescription and my brain is functioning. So I talk my way and manipulate my way out. But the challenge I have is that before I leave, they say, we're going to send you with all the medication, the lithium and the baclofen, but we're going to take you off the Ativan. So we're going to taper you off 7 days. To put this into perspective, people spend 17 months getting off Xanax. And now they're
Mm.
going to taper me in 7 days. And they do, and they send me home. They don't communicate anything to my family about what's to happen next.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I get home, now I am coming off of Ativan, not Xanax, and I am on the floor in my parents' house in the fetal position screaming. I literally thought I was going to die. It's one of the most painful experiences in my life.
Mm.
What do you do? What
Yeah.
you gotta realize, like my family and my friends, I come from an entrepreneur. I have a very strong network, very resourced, right? Like
Yeah.
affluent, like we have contacts. Like no one knows what to do.
Yeah.
And so my family's like, we want to send you to another facility. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to go back into psych watch with someone walking around, writing everything I do down every 15 minutes in my room at night in the corner every 15 minutes, hear a click of a pen. I was like, there's no fucking way you're going to put me back in another facility. I did everything I could to talk out of that. Well, you need to make a decision, Chris. Like, and this is love. Like, you need to do something. So I'm going back to Tulum. And I mean, it just put everyone in an uproar, understandably. Like, what do
Yeah.
you mean go back to Tulum? You need like medical help. Chris, like, trust doctors, go back to doctors. Like, well, who do you think you are? Just knew I need to come back to Tulum where I live. And so, against everyone's will, which is completely understandable, I came back to Tulum. And when I got here, I was completely suicidal. For the first
Mm.
week, I thought, hey, if I go to the beach and get on my bike and go to the gym, like, will my brain snap back into place if it like broke in the first place, right? Because again, we're all under the understanding I had a mental breakdown, but I don't understand anything about this shit.
Yeah.
So that's not working. So the first thing I do is I bring in a naturopathic doctor who's a friend of mine, and I just want to get off the medication. And obviously, the doctors at the facility, everyone's like, the worst thing you can do is get off the medication. But I'm like, I'm getting off this medication.
Yeah.
And as I get off all of it, at the same time, I'm in so much physical pain that I'm looking for any relief. So I start tinkering with anything I can find. Alcohol doesn't work, psilocybin doesn't work, MDMA works.
Mm.
It literally is like an instant relief from the pain. And what it is, it's a serotonin reuptake. So
Mm.
basically, what it does is it makes me feel normal. So
Mhm.
at this point, I can't get off the Xanax and I can't get off the MDMA in the sense of needing it. So I basically go into this vicious cycle for 3.5 months where I take MDMA, I stay up literally for 3 nights at a time because it's like a Freddy Krueger movie. If I go to sleep and wake up, then I'll wake up in benzo's withdrawal. And I'll take a Xanax to go to sleep, just resetting the cycle. And like, it's crazy. So I'm
Yeah.
taking a street drug to feel normal, but I wake up and I'm completely messed up. So you have to realize the hell within the hell at this point is I am now fully 110% convinced that I'm permanently disabled.
Mm.
Something happened. I was in that pool too long. Maybe I had brain damage. Maybe I this mental breakdown I can't come back from. But like after 7 months of being in that shape, which is basically like being tortured alive, like I'm convinced like I'm not going to survive. And so in that process, I pushed everyone out of my life and I invited one person in to take care of me. And it was a medicine woman, a girl that I knew in Tulum, actually, a girl that I had dated. And she dropped her life. And for 3.5 of that 7 months, she took care of me every single day. I was like a
Mm.
5-year-old. I couldn't function. I developed agoraphobia. I couldn't leave my house. I was emaciated, like losing weight, all of it. I was shutting down.
Yeah.
After 7 months, the whole time she didn't know, my family didn't know, I had a gun with bullets. So I was just going to take the gun and basically blow my brains out when I couldn't biologically handle this breakdown of like my body and the pain. I didn't want to die, but biologically, I can't take it anymore after 7 months. And I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
She sits me down and she says, Chris, I have a solution. She said, I don't believe that you had a mental breakdown. I believe that you're in a benzos withdrawal. And you've been in a benzos withdrawal for 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a solution. If you microdose ayahuasca, half a teaspoonful, breakfast, lunch, and dinner will save your life. And I looked at her and I said, bullshit.
Mm.
I'm permanently, I've gone to doctors, I've been into facilities, I've tried all this stuff, and you're telling me that like some ayahuasca, like microdosing is gonna work. You gotta be shitting me. But
Yeah.
here's the reality. A, she was about to walk out the door because she couldn't hold space for anymore, which is understandable. Most
Yeah.
people lasted 2 weeks. She lasted 3.5 months. She's an absolute angel
Yeah.
to last that long.
Yeah.
And B, there were no other options on the table.
Yeah.
No other options. So I said, okay. And so we went into my room and I stopped taking the Xanax. I stopped taking the MDMA and I started microdosing that ayahuasca, half a teaspoonful, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And for the first 6 days, I went in the most god awful experience of my life. My body was contorting. The pain levels were so high, I was passing out and disassociating.
Yeah.
And the pain was so high that I was literally beating myself in the face. I was
Mm.
delirious.
Yeah.
And somehow, some way, minute by minute, we stayed in that room and I could have taken the MDMA that was at the top of my closet, right? I could have taken his Xanax, but I didn't. And on the 6th day, I passed out and I woke up and I was lucid for 90 minutes.
Mm.
I remember thinking to myself, if I'm lucid for 90 minutes, why can't this happen for 3 hours? And from day 7 to day 15, I was completely cured.
Wow.
I scanned my body. There's no depression. There's no anxiety. There's no psychosis. None of it. What just happened? You got to be shitting me. I was surprised. She was equally surprised. Like she believed it, but we didn't know it was going to happen at that level, right? It's like
Yeah.
it felt miraculous. It's not miraculous. What happened is the particular ayahuasca I took acted as a mediator between my brain and the benzos. So when I got off the benzos, it literally came in and passed the baton for my brain to pick up the firing of my neurotransmitters. And this has happened for hundreds and hundreds of people through the girl that helped me, her mentor in Costa Rica, who was guiding us through the process. She has
Mm.
a home in Costa Rica and helps people with heroin and benzos. And so this wasn't anything new. And so basically, the ayahuasca saved my life.
That
And
is incredible. That is incredible. That's an incredible like full hero's journey story where it was as if it just like that, like it just stopped. Like you came back full circle and then you were there. And what was that moment like when you did truly become lucid and you're like almost doing a debrief of that whole experience? Were you aware then of the misinterpretations and all the like, oh, I was in a right? Benzos, withdrawal. Like, what was that experience like when you came back?
I mean, it took me some time. At first, I was really scared. I was scared that like I would pop back into what I was because again, it would
Mm, yeah.
take me probably 2 months to start researching medical journals and understanding benzodiazepines and reading case studies and things that have happened to people. So when it initially happened, I was grateful, but I was living in fear. Like I remember the first night, like going to sleep, I was scared to death to go to sleep because
Yeah.
I thought like I was going to wake up back in benzo's withdrawal again.
Yeah.
But luckily, as time went on, like weeks, I started to get confident that this had fully worked and not just worked, but like permanently worked, and I wasn't going to go back.
Yeah.
And bro, you can't pay for gratitude.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no expectation. And put this in perspective, I took my last microdose of ayahuasca April 15th of 2023. So
Oh,
just
wow.
a year ago. So it has led me to a place of like it's a second chance. It's like a Raymond K. Hess moment. If you ever remember watching Fight Club, where Brad Pitt takes him out back and puts a gun to his head.
Yeah.
And why would you do that? And he said, well, tomorrow when he wakes up, his breakfast will taste better than any meal you and I have ever had. I
Yeah.
really felt like I had that. Like the sun was brighter, the sky's bluer, like, and it's been
Yeah.
like that. And so, but the real value, as we talked about before, was like I had to understand because there's two parts to my story. There's what happened when that pill went in my mouth that was outside of my control. But what I was in control of is every decision that I made in my life that led me up to a point that we needed to put a pill in my mouth.
Mm.
What made me push myself that hard? And it's all going back to that trauma of like I felt inadequate. And
Yeah.
no matter what I did, no matter how many businesses I started and how much money I made and how much success I had and how much, and it wasn't even money, it was a lot of it was impact, how much impact I was having through the brotherhood that I was running, all of it. It was just like, it was never enough. I never could feel like I was enough.
Yeah.
Real liberation was the liberation that I got from that feeling and the liberation that I got from needing to be validated by other people. And basically and here's the thing, it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to feel it. Because I tell anyone that's listening, everyone knows what we're talking about here, but I'll tell you the litmus test, when you wake up every day, do you feel like you have something to prove? And
Mm.
if you do, you don't really feel what we're talking about. You know it, but you're not living it. You haven't taken the journey from the head to the heart, which is the longest journey that we have to take.
Yeah.
But what I really feel and live every day is that I'm not what I have, I'm not what I do, and I'm not what they think.
Hmm.
Freedom from those three things is a beautiful place to wake up and live every day because I
Yeah.
wake up living every day from a place of authenticity
Yeah.
because I can be who I am because I don't need you to accept me in order to feel good about myself. And
Yeah.
because I don't have anything to prove, I can build businesses and do what I want to do in an entirely different way. It's a beautiful space to be.
It's a beautiful space. And I want to touch on that. I also want to touch on like what the average individual can do without going into, 12 months of benzo's withdrawal and massive, hero's journey to get to where you now are. But I do want to touch on what you just described because I very much feel that as well. And like I feel that fully within my being where I can wake up every day and I can just be like, oh, I'm me. Like I'm free. Like because I used to like, oh, then every once in a while there's like that sense of like more unsatisfied or like the desire of life, is always there. And there's like a really kind of funny thing. This is where I'm at right now in my personal journey, which is like I feel really easy about life, and at the same time, sometimes I'll like question myself, like, should I be wanting more? Like it's like a really funny place where I'm like, dude, I'm like so satisfied with who I am and like my mindset and like my spirit and just everything. Like I'm like really at ease. And then I'm like, oh, should I be building a bigger business? I was like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's like it's kind of a funny place, where like that's my personal edge right now, which is kind of a funny place. But it's like to have that sense of ease and peace of mind and freedom. There is such a joyfulness about that, and it's incredibly relaxing. And
I
there
do
is
want
like,
to
yeah, go ahead,
hit
go
on
ahead.
something there that you said because the major objection comes up if I liberate myself from those drivers that drove me to where I am, is that going to make me a non-performer? Is it going
Mm,
to basically turn me into a pansy? And what I'm
mm,
going to tell you is absolutely not. It's just going to allow you to get exactly where you want to go because you can answer the question, how much is enough?
Mm.
What's driving you is if you don't feel like you're enough, as they asked Rockefeller on his deathbed, how much money is enough? He said $1 more. So what
Mm.
happens is you just stop moving the goalpost. It's not that you don't hit the goalpost that you want. The problem that most of us have, or ones that are listening right now, the reason you're not hitting the goalpost is you just keep moving it.
Yeah.
When I get here, and then it's the win then, win then, win then. So what we're doing is we're removing that and creating clarity on this is exactly the life I want. This is how much I want in my investment portfolio. This is how much revenue in my business I want. This, whatever those numbers are, those numerical numbers, it allows you to get clear on that and to stop changing them.
Yeah.
So it makes you a more, it makes you a performer that has clarity.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I use a process called I call it the clarity formula, which is like literally like we'll sit down and be like, okay, well, what is the next step? Like if I feel like I'm at a 9 out of 10 in my relationship, like what does a 10 mean? Like what does that actually mean for me? And then I can be like, oh, objectively, that means I want to go on more dates with my wife. Right. So like, okay, I'm gonna do the work to set up date day. I'm gonna get creative. I'm gonna find places. It's like I see very much what you're saying because it gives you an opportunity to be at ease and satisfied with who you are, where you are, etc. And also like, oh, I get to do this. I get to go forward. I get to like it's like a juiciness about moving forward. It's a lot more fun. There was another point that I totally blanked on. We were talking about the heroes. Oh, the what the average Joe can do.
Got
If
that.
you had to go back, right, without going into deep psychosis, for 7 months and incredible pain, what would you say to like the average entrepreneur like that is in that place of, hey man, like I got to earn my like keep. I got to find my worth. I got to make more and more and more, right? Like what would you say to that guy?
So we're either going to get to a place of health in our lives by choice or catastrophe.
Yeah.
And you heard
Truth.
catastrophe, and what
Truth.
part of why I'm sharing this story is like you don't need to fucking go down that road. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be at this level. So I'm like the case study of, hey, there could be a better way
Yeah.
to do this, right? You don't
Yeah.
have to push that hard. So I believe that men can get there by choice, and that's just coming to that realization of just being fed up, like coming conscious of the things that we're talking about and realizing that like, hey, I might be winning at business, but I'm losing at home.
Yeah.
You can't, how do your kids and your wife find connection and resonance with a man who is emotionless and has no feelings because you're suppressing and you're ignoring? Like
Yeah.
and then when that relational bill comes due, like it's painful. I've heard older men talk about that as the most painful bill you have to pay when your kids look at you and you have that sense of like you failed them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're what, you know what I'm saying? It's just like every guy at that level tells you I would have traded it all
Yeah.
if I could go back and do it. So I believe that we can get there by choice. And I tell men, well, if you're not going to do it for you, at least be the relational hero of your family and stop this insanity that's happening generationally because your father was probably the same way and his grandfather. So we're just repeating history through this.
Yeah.
But I believe step one is it begins with getting out of isolation.
Yep.
I think, and I've discovered that stress plus isolation is the absolute ultimate killer of entrepreneurial men.
Yes.
We isolate because we're shameful and guiltful about the things that we're talking about, and because it's not masculine according to our misunderstanding of what masculinity is about to talk about these things.
Yeah.
So first I tell men like, get out of isolation. The heart cannot thrive in isolation.
Yeah.
It thrives in community. And then number two, I tell men that, okay, once you make that choice, then you got to get radically honest. And that's super hard. I get it. We love the vulnerability in other people, but we hate it in ourselves, as Brene Brown says.
Yeah.
I challenge any person listening today, hearing my story, do you have more or less respect for me? I'm going to say more. And the same thing, I'm going to remind you when you come out and you're radically honest and talk about whatever you're struggling with, like there's going to be respect for that. And again, if you're doing it with the right people, like David and I are talking, there's no judgment because a lot of the shit going on in your life has nothing to do with you.
Yes.
This happened between 0 to 10. You were like a kid, a boy. how do you have judgment for that? Like this is trauma. This is
Hmm.
the human story. You know what I'm saying? There's no judgment.
Yeah.
However this is played out in your life. And then thirdly, from there, you have to get help. And I believe that we talked about earlier, somatic work of the body, there are many roads inward,
Yeah.
many roads.
Yeah.
So, no matter if it's breath work or hypnotherapy or internal family systems or family constellations or plant medicine, or it doesn't matter. It matters to find those roads that
Hmm.
work for you,
Yeah.
because your journey is your journey and it's going to be unique to you.
Yeah. 100%. I absolutely agree. Doing that, going on the journey within, like there's no other way. And the more we expand, the more within we must go in order to find that next level. And it just continues and it just continues. And there's always like the ebbs and flows. And I've noticed that I want to say the bigger, right? Like that's the wrong word, but like the more my world expands, whether it's, more reach on, social media platforms or in networks and connection, the more I need to go within and be able to hold space for myself and hold space for the world and do all that stuff. So there is, yeah, you're right, absolutely right. Like you have to do the work. You have to go within. You have to start questioning your own sensations. Why am I thinking this way? Why am I feeling this way? What's there? What's underneath that? Have curiosity. Go a little bit deeper, because without that, you'll just continue to completely misinterpret. I mean, you used that word before. It's a complete misinterpretation. It doesn't have to be in psychosis, but it's a misinterpretation of what you actually think is true versus what is true. And what is true is that you are whole, you are complete, you are loved, you are adequate, you are good enough, you are worthy, all of those things. But the misinterpretation is I'm not those things. I'm not good enough. I'm not adequate. I'm not, like you kind of fill in the blank. And so yeah, I've very much gone on that journey, right? I think that's what led us to each other. We resonate, we vibe, and which is beautiful, man. So, if any guys out there on their journey, any last words that you want to share, with entrepreneurs or anything that's on your heart.
Yeah. Let's see what comes up for me. I think what's coming up particularly for me today, for people listening, is like, you don't have a choice. First the body's going to talk to you, and then the
Mm,
body's going to scream at you. So you can continue to kick the can down the road, and you can continue to ignore, suppress, and numb. But at some point, your body's going to win. Like, that trauma is going to come out. And so I think for whatever reason today, what's coming up for me is like, regardless of how much you think that you're going to be able to manage this and keep it under wraps, at some point you're going to lose.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's inevitable. Your
yeah.
body will shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've been there. It's really funny. I like wrote in my notes as you were talking, just as something to come back to, which is like, what are those early warning signs? Because it's so common, but you just hit the nail on the head, which is really funny. You answer my question without me even asking it, which is it's like it starts as a tension. It just it's like maybe a couple like breaths that feel tight, and then it slowly starts to turn it might manifest into physical pain. It might manifest into literal dis-ease, right? You might pick up a, back pain, neck pain. It might pick up a, pancreatitis, appendicitis. It's wild how this stuff manifests, and then it starts to go down the path. And, you mentioned the word we don't have a choice. And like it's such an interesting thing because the the oak tree doesn't have a choice but to grow, right? It's like it's on the path. And so the choice is still there of how are you going to approach it? So there is free will choice. It's like, how are you going to experience this? You're going to have some growing pains. But the path of maturation of the human psyche is such that we're all going to go on it. We're all going to separate as children. We're all going to go and experience trauma, you know, as like the just the separation of self. We're going to create these belief systems, these thoughts, these feelings, these actions around these old belief systems, around these old ideas of self, of what we think we must be in order to achieve the sense of safety, love, security, worthiness, fill in the blank. And then the way life works, it's like, well, you're going to become whole. So you might as well go through it, right? Like you can go kicking and screaming, or you can surrender to the process and do it. So that was, yeah, beautifully put, man. I love your story. I love your journey. It's the process of the hero's journey is absolutely at the core of my being. I'm super passionate about that. In fact, I think that's, I mean, honestly, the entire process of the Unbreakable Man. That's what I created at, why we do what we do at the 3 day experience, the Unbreakable Man experience is literally that. It's like, can I take a full hero's journey instead of doing it for like what you said, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months? For me, it was like 8 years. Can we pack it into 3 days and completely transform? And it's beautiful, man. I think we all need that. We all need that opportunity to break through those processes and all that stuff. So um, how can people find out about you, man? Like, what do you got going on? And yeah, tell us more about what your offerings are.
Yeah, so my life has been all about simplification, being on the other side of this.
Yeah.
I love Albert Einstein's quotes, one of my favorite quotes that I came across this last year. There's five ascending levels of intellect: smart, intelligent, brilliant, genius, and simple.
Mm,
And that's really where I found myself. So, my passion now is working with men. I work particularly with what I would consider to be very high achieving entrepreneurs. And so, I ran a brotherhood for 6, 7 years called Multipliers. And in my process, that was part of my stripping because I lost, I wasn't able to function. So we had to shut businesses down, different things like that. But I think my favorite part of this story is that it's come full circle, not just to be a story about plant medicine and big pharma and all the things that we've talked about in trauma, but it's a story about brotherhood.
yeah.
And our brotherhood now is called Simplifiers. I think
Beautiful.
that encapsulates my story and where we're
Yeah.
all at. And if anyone listening, I tell people for two reasons. Again, I'm off social media, all that type of stuff. I've completely simplified, but you can go to simplifiersbrotherhood.com and you can reach out to us there. And one of two reasons: either A, you're hearing this and the conversation that David and I have had is like reading your mail, and you've got some serious challenges going on right now, and you just like need someone to talk to, you need some help.
Yeah.
And David and I have put together a lot of resources for guys like you. So
Yeah.
you're one of those guys looking for resources, or man, you might even be at a place where the suicidal ideations are there. Like, this shit's no joke. This is life and death conversations.
Yeah.
We're here to support that. And if you also have an interest in taking a look at the brotherhood that we run and how we're going about creating this journey specifically for high achieving male entrepreneurs, then you can check us out there too at simplifiersbrotherhood.com.
Beautiful, man. That's incredible. Yeah, man. And thank you so much for coming on, sharing your journey and yeah, just opening your heart today, man. It's such an important conversation to be having amongst all of us, and let alone men, but yeah, like we absolutely need to have these conversations about our hero's journey of our reckoning and it's, you're such a testament to that. And I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing that.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, my friend.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Appreciate you listening to this episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. And as always, we'll see you on the next one.